The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
My name is Claire Dalton. The first sound of laughter came before the waiter could even place the bread on the table. My sister, Tiffany, raised her champagne glass towards the overhead light. Her new engagement ring shone, reflecting the brightness like a beacon. "Claire handles admin work," my sister sang out. It was a pleasant-sounding insult. My mother actually smiled at the comment, and my father gently cleared his throat, confirming his quiet agreement, though perhaps trying to seem polite. The air in the restaurant carried the scent of fresh butter and the sea. I noticed the aroma of Chicago oysters and lemon. Cold drafts hit us whenever the host opened the main door. I placed my napkin on my lap. I focused on the salt crystals sitting on the glass rim, counting them instead of looking at the staircase. Marcus Vance, her fiancé, sat across from me. He watched me without the usual feigned disinterest I often saw in others. Tiffany repeated, "Admin," leaning her head onto Marcus's shoulder. She laughed about spreadsheets and paper clips. Other guests joined in. It was the type of laughter that reveals how little people expect of you, challenging your self-worth. Marcus picked up his wine glass but paused before drinking. "What is your job, Claire?" he asked. His tone was genuinely curious. He seemed to notice a detail everyone else ignored. I put down my water glass gently to avoid making noise against the crystal. "I make decisions," I stated, meeting his gaze. I meant the kind of decisions people only appreciate once the outcome is complete. A slight confusion moved through the group. The moment felt disrupted, as if the usual script had failed. My mother grabbed the bread basket. My sister rolled her eyes instantly and returned to discussing the seating plan. She talked about beach settings and dresses requiring specific tailoring. The server approached to ask our main courses. I ordered the halibut. I felt a slight, familiar shift inside myself. It was an internal mechanism that converted the surrounding noise into silence. I wasn't angry. It was the quiet anticipation just before harsh weather hits. Nobody at the table realized the atmosphere had truly changed. I first understood the family had chosen a favorite child when I was 10 years old. My sister, about a year younger, spilled grape juice onto my mother's expensive silk scarf. When the purple stain bloomed, they immediately called my name, Claire. They told me I should have been supervising her. I stood with small fists clenched, baffled. How was I supposed to protect a sibling barely younger than me? I wondered why they ignored the fact she had laughed while tipping the juice glass. This established pattern never went away. As teenagers, my father constantly praised my sister's piano performances, even if she played poorly. Meanwhile, my awards from the debate team sat unused in a cabinet. My mother displayed my sister's modeling pictures, glossy photos from her early jobs, all along the stairs. Any academic honors I earned, if they weren't left in the drawer, usually ended up buried by junk mail in the home office. During holidays and celebrations, the unfair preference became more apparent, framed as light teasing. My mother would touch her necklace and declare my sister was the dreamer. She described me simply as practical. This word meant plain, cautious, and uninteresting. I forced a smile. I learned to handle the situation the same way I learned to serve appetizers at family gatherings while my sister posed for pictures with the guests. Her voice was always louder than the background music. For one Thanksgiving dinner, I prepared an apple pie myself. The crust was perfect, golden brown, and the filling smelled strongly of cinnamon. My sister showed up late, carrying a store-bought cake in an ornate box. Everyone instantly chose her dessert. My father complimented the cake highly, even though the middle part was still partially frozen. I looked at the pie, which no one had touched. The heat faded, leaving the pie looking dull and exhausted, exactly how I felt. This wasn't just about dessert or presents. It was the established, unspoken ranking at every social event. My sister sat receiving praise in the central spot. I remained peripheral, expected to pour drinks, remove dishes, and handle miscellaneous tasks. No one ever wondered why she never assisted. It was simply understood that I would manage those things. Beneath the ongoing stream of minor slights, a quiet determination took root within me. I decided I would no longer wait for their approval. Instead, I created a secret life filled with concepts, plans, and detailed notebooks. No one bothered to ask about these. If I ever mentioned wanting success, they dismissed it as being overly serious or boring. Consequently, I kept my ideas to myself. They failed to notice, or chose not to see, that each time they ignored me, I retreated further into a space where their acceptance was unnecessary. They assumed they were pigeonholing me as the dependable sibling, the one in the background. In reality, they were strengthening an inner resilience they could not understand. Left in the quiet shadows, I began crafting the identity that would eventually silence their laughter and force them to recognize what they had ignored. By the time my sister turned 22, these minor injuries were just part of life. The small hurts became a daily routine. By the time my sister turned 22, she didn't even notice the pain she inflicted anymore. One summer morning, she borrowed my car for a photo shoot, leaving me stuck outside my apartment building in the humid July heat. When she finally brought the car back hours later, the fuel gauge showed empty. A lipstick smear marked the sun visor, and she just laughed when I showed disappointment about the large coffee stain soaking into the passenger seat. "Chill out, Claire," she dismissed me. "It's only a Honda Accord." That day, I was late, 40 minutes late, to a vital meeting. That meeting would decide the outcome of a major project I had dedicated months to building. No one in my family asked me how the meeting went. My sister's only concern was whether she could borrow my light jacket for drinks that evening. The holiday season offered no kindness. My sister unwrapped a designer handbag from our parents. The leather gleamed beneath the Christmas tree lights. Marcus, her then boyfriend, gave her a diamond necklace that seemed to radiate its own light. I opened my package to find a date book. It was plain black leather with sharp, neat corners. My cousins started giggling when my sister loudly snorted. "A planner. Oh my God, Claire, your whole personality is office supplies." I recall tracing the letters embossed on the cover. I quietly whispered that it was exactly what I needed, but no one was listening. They had no idea that those blank pages would hold the initial sketches for an achievement they couldn't even fathom. Her sense of entitlement grew bolder as the wedding preparations consumed her. One night at 2 a.m., she called me, speaking unclearly after a party. She demanded I rewrite her professional summary for a magazine profile. "You're good at all that admin stuff," she insisted. When I reminded her I had an early morning start, she retorted, "It's not like your job is important." So I stayed awake until dawn. I restructured her resume while my own critical presentation slides were open on a separate monitor. Later that very morning, fueled only by caffeine, I stood up in front of a corporate board. I presented a plan that completely changed the financial direction of our entire investment fund. She texted me later that day to say thanks. No emoji, no warmth. But by then, the deal was already moving forward. The bridal shower was supposed to be a nice occasion, a chance for us to enjoy time together. Instead, she announced to her friends, "Claire is handling the cleanup and the decorations. She's really amazing at organizing papers." Laughter filled the room as I adjusted the floral centerpieces. I nodded politely, all while discreetly managing acquisition papers worth millions on my phone. Each one of these moments damaged something tender inside me, yet they also made me stronger. They believed they were keeping me insignificant. In fact, they were simply giving me constant motivation to step outside their narrow view and establish something that didn't require their attention. However, despite these continual insults, I kept showing up. Perhaps it was out of a sense of duty, or maybe it was the lingering hope that they might one day see me clearly. What I did not realize then was that the moment of truth was already approaching. It was simply waiting for the right evening, the perfect question, and the necessary silence to shatter everything. The reality of who I was never existed at their dinner table. It resided in the early, quiet hours, the hours my family never bothered to imagine for me. They assumed I went back to a boring apartment, ate microwave dinners, and dealt with stacks of reports. They never saw the skyline outside my office high in Chicago at midnight. The city glowed like electrical wiring while I studied complex market reports and contracts until my vision blurred. For almost 10 years, I worked my way up the ladder in finance. I started as an analyst. No one knew my name. I learned to sit silently in meetings with men much older than me, studying the concepts of valuations, leverage, and exit strategies. While my sister perfected her appearance for modeling shoots, I focused on creating presentations that secured funding from investors for new technologies. This work was not glamorous, unlike hers, but it held quiet, precise, and undeniable power. 3 years ago, the opportunity arose to launch my own investment firm. I signed the documents without telling my family anything. I called it Stratton Group. I chose the name from the street where I first rented a small, cheap apartment. That place, with its thin walls and peeling paint, constantly reminded me that beginnings do not limit endings. I wanted that reminder built into every decision. I hired a team that valued quiet action over noise. We focused on health technology companies, firms that could truly change hospital care and lower family medical expenses. My parents sighed about my unimportant job, yet I was finalizing deals across oceans, arranging partnerships in Berlin, Singapore, and Toronto. The evidence was there for anyone who cared to look. My simple, sleek business card. The private phone calls I took during dinners, using concise language about regulatory clearances. They always assumed I was talking to a friend or hiding a boyfriend. No one ever bothered to ask. Sometimes I thought about sharing the truth. Then I recalled the mocking about the planner, the eye rolls whenever I mentioned work. Why offer my success when they would only turn it into a joke? I kept the truth to myself. Their dismissal became my armor. Every time they called my job admin, I focused on the large figures on my laptop, the approval signatures, and the lives our investments would improve. They were unknowingly strengthening the fortress I built. When the engagement dinner arrived, that fortress was complete. It only needed one question to finally open up. The night before the dinner, my closet was open. The hanger for my black silk dress was empty. I had chosen the dress weeks ago. It was elegant but simple, suitable for the expensive restaurant my sister picked. She returned it hours later. It smelled faintly of perfume, and a red wine stain covered the sleeve. She dropped it on my bed without a word of apology. "You wouldn't wear it anyway," she said, dismissing me with a flip of her hair. "You don't get invited to important parties." I held the stained fabric. Once I might have cried, hoping she'd feel remorse. Now I simply folded the damaged dress and put it away. I chose a different one, navy blue, tailored. I had worn it the day I closed the huge Phoenix Health deal. It wasn't showy, but it carried weight no one in my family could recognize. That evening, while my sister perfected her fiancé's name and her smile, I reviewed urgent emails from my team at my kitchen table. Projections and regulatory approvals scrolled past, including a press draft with my name at the bottom. Each detail was a tether to the identity I had created. The contrast was ridiculous. She polished her image for approval. I polished strategy that would shake global markets by Monday. I closed my laptop around midnight. A text came from my head strategist, Jonathan, terms locked, ready for announcement. I took a slow, deep breath, like preparing for cold water. Tomorrow wasn't about her ring. It was about the truth my family refused to acknowledge. As I hung the navy dress up, I felt completely steady. I was ready for the quiet to finally break. The restaurant my sister selected was the type of place where the waitstaff moved like ghosts. They refilled glasses before they were half empty and disappeared as if they were never there. Crystal fixtures overhead cast bright reflections across the white tablecloths, making every single laugh at our table sound too loud. My sister soaked up the attention. She introduced Marcus to every relative and family friend, her hand intentionally showing off the diamond like a signal. "He's in finance," she would confide, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Very well connected." Every action was practiced, every moment an advertisement for her chosen life. I sat 2 seats away, smoothing the navy blue dress over my lap, simply observing. My mother leaned toward me with her familiar, condescending smile, the one that mixed faint pride with clear pity. "Not everyone can be a high achiever, Claire," she whispered, almost offering comfort. I pressed my utensil against the plate edge to stop myself from responding. When the discussion moved to professional life, my sister spoke for the family. My dad is a doctor. My mom manages her art gallery, and I'm involved in fashion, obviously. She lifted her chin toward me, her voice heavy with amusement. And Claire, she handles basic administrative tasks. She's always been the reliable one. The laughter that followed was polite, but it still hurt. I felt the heat rise up my neck as I looked at the untouched starter plate in front of me. For a second, it was the exact same script, the usual small put-downs. Then Marcus leaned forward. His gaze was direct, not mocking. "But what is your actual job, Claire?" he asked. The table went still. Utensils stopped moving, and wine glasses paused midair. I carefully placed my fork onto the plate edge so it wouldn't make a sound. "Strategy," I answered simply. "Investment strategy." The silence hung heavy for a moment. The talk eventually restarted, but it was quieter now. People glanced toward me as if my brief statement had disrupted the expected order of the evening. Marcus's father, a figure known in the financial press, subtly narrowed his eyes. The feeling of the dinner had changed. They didn't know it, but the climax of the storm was beginning. As the main courses were cleared, the atmosphere felt markedly different. My sister continued talking about destination weddings, perhaps Capri or Bali, but her voice was shallower now, desperately trying to regain the spotlight. I drank my wine and allowed the silence between her words to grow longer. Marcus's father, sitting across from me, leaned in slightly. "Stratton Group," he said quietly, as if testing the name. "That's your firm, isn't it? In the tower on Wacker Drive." My knife paused against the china. I met his look. I was completely steady. "We moved in 2 years ago. The views are exceptional." His eyes widened slightly. Then he spoke louder for the whole table to hear. "Marcus, did you know Claire is with Stratton?" The laughter died entirely. My sister's smile froze, becoming too strained. "She's kidding," she quickly insisted, gripping Marcus's arm. "Claire handles admin work downtown." But Marcus's father pressed the point, his voice cutting through the space. "No, she is not kidding." He studied me, seeking confirmation. "You founded Stratton, didn't you?" I set my fork down deliberately. "Yes," I confirmed. "I did." Small gasps moved around the table, quick intakes of breath, like glass breaking. Marcus blinked. His composure finally broke. "Stratton just handled the Meditech acquisition," he whispered. "Was that you?" I nodded once. My mother's hand shook as she reached for water. My father's face relaxed, the practiced smile gone. My sister's face lost all its color. Her diamond ring suddenly looked cheap compared to the weight of my simple words. For years, they had dismissed me with simple terms. Practical, admin, boring. Tonight, that description was replaced by a different one. Founder. Around us, the servers efficiently carried out their duties, unaware that an entire family's shared perception had shattered in a single moment. I leaned back in my seat, feeling centered. "That paperwork you've all found so funny," I said softly, my gaze on my sister, "is the work I used to build Stratton Group. Stratton now manages more than $15 billion in assets." The ensuing silence was more impactful than any applause I could have ever wished for. When the last dishes were gone and the final wine bottle was empty, the night no longer belonged to my sister. Conversations that had revolved around her wedding and her jewelry now centered on me. Questions came about our global partnerships, our acquisition logic and market strategy. My father leaned forward, hanging on to every word, finally asking me things he never cared to ask before. My mother, visibly nervous, leaned over to a woman at the next table. "That's my daughter, the CEO," she whispered. My sister sat rigid. The color had left her cheeks, and her once loud laugh was a distant memory. I didn't brag. I only answered calmly, as if I had waited years, not to be acknowledged, but finally to be truly seen. For once, their approval didn't matter. The truth had already transformed the space. Outside, waiting for the attendant, my sister pulled on my arm. "Why did you never tell us?" she demanded, her voice sharp and shaking. I met her eyes calmly. Because you never asked me. You were too busy explaining to the world who you decided I was. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Behind us, headlights illuminated the street, and my car arrived. It wasn't the old Honda Accord she had once mocked. It was a black Mercedes. Her eyes widened as she realized the shadow she had dismissed was no longer there. As I got into the driver's seat, she tried again. "You'll speak at the wedding, right? I want everyone to know you're." I smiled faintly and closed the door. "I have a board meeting in Tokyo that week. Some admin work I can't reschedule." The engine started smoothly. Driving off into the night, I felt a deep calm I had never known at any family gathering. For so long, I believed I needed their recognition. The simple truth was better. The empire I had built spoke much louder than any of their dismissals ever could. Success rarely arrives with fanfare. Sometimes it just shows up quietly, takes a seat at the table, and leaves the room permanently changed.